understand that for yourself, and then communicate it to others. People who see that authentic passion
probably see, that you are passionate, that you are going to stay in this industry, and it is worth investing their time and
digging into finding what really motivates us at our core. And so it becomes this opportunity to, in each dialogue, look at what is it that someone else is trying to solve, what is it that you're trying to achieve, and how do you bridge those perspectives? Because at the end of the day, negotiation isn't about there's an us and there's a them. It's about seeing a we and then helping bring forward the possibility of the we. But having senior sponsors at the table who are willing to advocate for you is incredibly important.
Last episode, we covered all things leadership. Today, we're getting seriously practical. Loddie, who was the Global Director of New Products and General Manager of Emerging Markets across Latin America, Asia Pacific, and the Middle East, has helped shape global vaccine strategies, brushing shoulders with some of the most influential health ministers in the world. Today, she spills the tea on breaking into pharma, overcoming career challenges, and finding that mentor who could change your life. How did you find your way into the pharmaceutical industry in line with the channel's name? How did you find pharma?
It was actually my first internship in grad school. I worked on drug delivery devices, in vascular stents, and I just fell in love. I knew that I wanted to work on something that was close to the human heart. I didn't know I meant that literally at the time with that internship. But, working in the healthcare industry, you directly touch people's lives, because when people can operate from a place of health and wellness, it touches everything else, right? Their work, their community, how they can engage with their family, their hobbies. So it's a deeply personal way to impact the world. So that was definitely an early calling for me.
Yeah, love it first sight. I love it. I alluded to some of the senior leadership roles that you've had or held previously. What was the biggest challenge you faced as general manager of emerging markets, and how did you overcome some of those challenges?
That's a really interesting one. I guess there's a few different elements here. But one of the things with emerging is that you're always in a space of newness, right? So you're actually helping an organization enter into new countries they haven't previously operated in, or maybe they're new to the country and you're helping expand and understand what success looks like. And so you start to think about what goes into that. Well, you need to be able to have adequate resources. So you need to advocate and create the right business cases so that there's a good balance of the resources that are flowing into these investment areas. And you also need to make sure that people feel appreciated and seen. So for example, when you're working across so many different markets, because I was responsible for markets in Latin America, Asia, parts of Middle East and Europe, there's just such diversity there that you have markets where employees have very different needs. So how do you appropriately advocate for things that employees need, for example, in hyperinflationary countries, et cetera? So it's really a lot of internal advocacy and helping people better understand and bridge perspectives. And then as you look to the outside, it's about building effective partnerships with companies that are either global players, they're local, multinational players, for example, operating quite a bit in a given geographic region, policymakers. So because I worked in the vaccine space, you're working with public officials who are trying to think through what should we do for vaccine policies in the public space, and how can the government appropriately support those, both financially and in terms of increasing awareness for the public. And so it becomes this opportunity to, in each dialogue, look at what is it that someone else is trying to solve, what is it that you're trying to achieve, and how do you bridge those perspectives? And it ends up making you really step up your negotiation skills, because at the end of the day, negotiation isn't about there's an us and there's a them. It's about seeing a we and then helping bring forward the possibility of the we into a joint vision that everyone then is excited about. And then everything else flows, right? Legal contracts and all that stuff flows from that. But you've got to be able to envision that. And that same mentality applies to anything in life. So I think it's an incredibly powerful space to be in when you get to operate at those points of diverse intersection.
I'm just imagining that room of when you're speaking to the health minister and talking about, negotiating and how do we solve this together. I'm here to work with you. And I think that would be a really cool conversation, but also, yeah, interesting challenge as well, I'm sure. There's a lot more to it.
Well, and some of that is the art of sales without selling, right? Because when you're thinking as a we, when you're thinking, how do I help this other person achieve their goals? You are in the process of developing a sales relationship, right? It's you're trying to increase revenue for your business, et cetera, but you're doing it from a place that's so incredibly mission driven, not just your own direct mission, but also the other person's mission, that it just feels natural. It feels like a collaboration and a partnership.
Yeah, totally.
Remember that for interviews.
Yes. Well, I was actually having this conversation with someone just yesterday on the skill of selling. Like, it's so universally applicable, whether it's coming home and convincing your kids why they need to eat their veggies, or speaking to the health minister and why they need to get these vaccines into the country ASAP. Like we use it day in, day out. Or you want to convince your partner, we're watching this on Netflix tonight. That's what I do. That's when I put my selling skills to the test. Oh, too funny. My next question. What advice would you give someone trying to secure their first role in pharma? So no industry experience, and maybe casting your mind back to that internship that you had. And how can these candidates stand out in such a crowded marketplace where potentially junior level roles, they're going up against some people with 1, 2, 3 years under their belt, and they're finding it super difficult? It's a question I get asked a lot of the time.
You want to find someone who wants to invest in you. And so don't let a rejection in a given job interview sway your confidence or sway your passion anyway. And I'm going back to thinking about your big why. What's the reason that you're excited about being in the pharma industry? And as you really are able to understand that for yourself and then communicate it to others, people who see that authentic passion will want to invest in you. They'll say, oh, this is really interesting. This person has clearly shown from something else in your background, right? Maybe it's school activities, clubs you've been in, community leadership, whatever it is. They've clearly demonstrated that when they are excited about something, they step into it and they really lean in and are willing and open to learn. And now they're demonstrating that they're excited about this specific position, and here's why they're excited about it. I want to invest in them. And that's really all it is, because there's all this silly stuff you hear about in industry sometimes, like you go in to apply for your first people leadership job, and they say, well, have you ever held a people leadership job? It's sort of the standard, like, well, I just want someone who's already done it. But if that's the type of manager that's interviewing, do you really want to work for them? Because will they see your potential when you're then trying to explore outside your comfort zone, trying to grow in new ways? And sometimes it's better to just go, oh, I guess that wasn't a match, right? So, and then you keep interviewing, you go to the next interview. You will land where you want to land. And I say that as someone who had to navigate a lot of transitions, even across functions. I've worked at this point in manufacturing and quality, technical services, R&D, strategy, commercial. I've worked in almost every function within the healthcare industry. And as I navigated those changes, at first, some of the hiring managers at each point were, yes, but have you done this job? Well, obviously not. Otherwise, I wouldn't be talking to you about it as a development opportunity. But then I would find the managers who were like, yes, I see something and I want to invest in you. And then you do really well in that. And then you get the next investment. And so you want to think about it as not just what's the job and the role and the title, but who are the people I'm going to be surrounded by, and what's their thoughts on cultivating talent.
Couldn't agree more. I've had some amazing managers in my time, and I say, pay rise, you feel good once a year, but for the 364 other days, like if the culture's not right, the leader's not right and believing in me, I'd rather not have the pay rise. I'd take the 364 days versus the one day where you see the numbers go up marginally.
Well, absolutely.
I suppose in line with that then, how can people find the right mentor, and why is mentorship so critical for leadership development?
There's been this interesting arising of some additional terms and additional to mentor. So I just want to drop that here as well as potentially a difference. There's mentors and there's sponsors. And mentors might be someone who are like, yeah, I'll share my knowledge with you. I'm happy to have a coffee chat and, give you some ideas. A sponsor is someone who's willing to go to bat for you. So it's really beyond just a mentor. They're willing to actually, for example, at those talent tables, say, hey, David's actually done really well on XYZ project over the past couple of years, and he's really interested in your function, Linda. I think, it'd be really great if you consider him for some of those new roles you have. Introduce him to some of the hiring managers on your team. So that's where I think it's really important to be clear in what your objectives are. And you can always ask, right? So sometimes people are hesitant to even ask, go up to someone and say, hey, would you be willing to have a conversation? Everyone's willing, almost everyone, I should say, is willing to have that first conversation, because actually it feels good to be able to share your own knowledge, share your skills, and feel like you've been able to pass those learnings on to benefit someone else. Most people love doing that. And then you can feel out in that conversation, is this someone who would potentially be open to having a recurring relationship? And you wouldn't necessarily, the first time you meet someone, be like, will you be a sponsor for me? Because if they don't know you, that's a bit much of an ask, right? But if they get to know you over time, they start to see your passion, your dedication. They're able to see the results you're bringing to the table. Those are the leaders that then you can convert into a sponsor. And it becomes incredibly important because they're in the rooms where you're not. And the rooms where you're not, where talent discussions are happening, is the room where things can become game-changing. And people actually hearing your name, hearing about your enthusiasm, your ability to drive results from someone other than yourself is also really important, right? Self-advocacy as a role, but having senior sponsors at the table who are willing to advocate for you is incredibly important. You should never be afraid to ask.
Yeah, I really like that approach as well around it. I see it as a bit like dating. You don't rock up to the first date and, hey, will you marry me? You warm them up to it, right? And that's potentially the way to build really long-lasting, authentic mentor and sponsor relationships. Or maybe it starts as a mentor and then they become your sponsor. So there's steps to it. And maybe to what we talked about in the last episode, patience and playing the long game, I guess. Yeah, it's going to take time. You can't expect someone to advocate for you or mentor you and give you all their knowledge off the bat. Like they want to probably see, that you are passionate, that you are going to stay in this industry, and it is worth investing their time and resource into helping you grow. And I think that just takes time, right?
Yeah, because it is capital. It is that person's capital to speak on your behalf.
Yeah. And look, there's no doubt finding a mentor is hard, but finding someone that's going to reply to your comments is probably even harder. But Loddie and I, we're an exception to this rule. If you have any other questions on mentorship, please drop them in the comments below. We will get back to you. We won't leave you on the scene zone. When I say we, it probably falls on my shoulders, but Loddie, if it's okay, I will flick some questions over to you if I can't answer them. Super. Now, I wanted to finish with some questions on the Imagine Fund.
Hello.
And maybe you can tell us a little bit more about that.
Sure.
I know you've worked on, some amazing different initiatives. So would love to hear some more.
So the Imagine Fund is what the US IRS classifies as a 501c3. So it is a nonprofit. And the Imagine Fund is dedicated to human equity causes. So gender equity, food equity, really all the equities, actually. It also touches education, anything you could imagine. So we are focused on imagining and then bringing forth a new, bright, equitable future. So we partner with an amazing global nonprofit. They've got all of the credibility and stars and ratings. They're called the Hunger Project, and they have global operations all around the world. And they're creating a world without hunger. And so we support them through the Imagine Fund by doing awareness events and by doing match campaigns. So we actually have a big match campaign going now where anyone who does a charitable donation through the Imagine Fund, we will double every dollar that they donate in support of this work for World Hunger Day. And we're also doing a special where we're offering a free transformational leadership speaker series. So we have industry speakers who are award-winning book authors who've been on U.S. national TV. And the event is completely free, but it's meant to spread awareness for World Hunger Day. So we have a series there. And we're also giving away a free coaching package through Know Your Worth, which is a transformational leadership program. And so, yeah, we're just trying to do our part in creating and bringing forth a new reality, because it takes each of us. And that's part of that, digging into finding what really motivates us at our core and what are all the different creative ways we can actually bring that forward into the world, and doing it in community so we can have greater impact together. And all your listeners are absolutely welcome to join us for the Transformational Leadership Speaker Series.
Yeah, I can't think of a better cause. You know, we talked about negotiation and finding a win-win for all parties. And I think this is like a triple win, you know, for you guys to apply. You're going to help eradicate world hunger. You're going to potentially put yourself in the running for transformational leadership. And I think the inner satisfaction, right? I read some books and in my spare time. And one of the quotes that I always remember is, the greatest gift is the gift of giving. And I think this is a wonderful opportunity, guys. So if you want to learn some more, I'm going to leave a link in the description below. Check out the link. We'll also put a QR code up here for you guys to scan and click through. Our final part in the interview series gets real about bouncing back from failure, finding leadership lessons in martial arts, and making a global impact. This is the kind of wisdom you just cannot afford to miss. Click here to watch now.